professional relationships is something that we really value.
That's why it ends up being, business, also some civil organizations like the, Director of Communications of the Department of Higher Education, we found.
Yeah. And the head of U.S. Cyber Command, we have connections with him as well. Right. So then I'll talk about this. Is really our awesome thing we're doing right now. We got $200,000 from the state of Ohio to build a cyber operations lab, which we're currently putting up. I can go to announcements. Actually, we got all of our servers moved into our ERC, our other secondary lab room, which is just a server room. So, I mean, come the desks. We get the monitors and our other desktops up. And we lost the stream. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, we sure did.
So essentially, this is just our project. We're going to be working on it. The whole idea is to have people have hands-on experience with enterprise-level hardware, learning how to set up a cyber operations center, like understanding it from the bottom up. If you want to get involved, you're more than welcome to. It's a great learning experience for everybody. I mean, I'm learning a ton from it. We're all going to learn a ton from it. What are you doing, man?
The computer straight up rebooted.
We lost the computer.
We lost the computer.
So all they're seeing is your face.
Okay. They can see my face.
Yeah.
But anyway, so U.S. Bank, actually this is what I was going to tell you about, Devin. They already reached out for us. They have a risk analyst position open, either in Cincinnati or a couple other positions around the United States. I think one's also in Oregon. And when they visited with us the other week, they pretty much wanted our organization to be one of the first organizations that feeds them co-ops in their cybersecurity department. So if you're looking to get into the field of cybersecurity, the risk analyst positions are really interesting, cool entry-level job. I'm going to post the link in Slack, and I'm also going to post the link for applying on the website probably. And then if you're interested, go for it.
Make sure that they know you're a member of Cyber UC.
Yeah, mention Cyber UC, and you're going to have you're probably going to get your paper put at the top of the stack.
Probably in the cover letter, I would say.
I mean, we have.
When you do an application, you typically have to do a cover letter and resume.
Yeah.
Include the Cyber UC in the cover letter.
So it's Murray, that you met him, Devin. He's like the director of all workforce recruitment of cybersecurity for U.S. Bank, like nationally. So he's the one that actually reached out to us with that position. So that's from Murray, the head of all the recruitment for us. So that's a pretty big deal. I can't take advantage of that. That's what you guys are here to take advantage of. And then my last announcement before I shut up and get out of here is the U.S. Bank visit planned for sometime in September. That's going to be touring their Security Operations Center. That'll be freaking awesome. I love going on these tours. They're also going to show us their forensics lab, and then asked us to send them any other things that we're interested in. So this Sunday when we host our executive meeting, I'm probably going to ask, to hear from you guys today, and then hear from whoever wants to come to the meeting Sunday, what you guys would value in a visit.
Can I before you go on, can I jump in here?
Add whatever you'd like. Yep.
Okay. So I've been pitching this to the whole group, right? About why an organization like this can provide leadership experience, okay? Because the club is in addition to your school education. We can filter through the organization, but because if you're using that I'm from Cyber UC connection, okay, then you're not only wanting to use it to help you find a job, but ideally have some leadership experience here so that if you're a Cyber UC co-op, they're grooming you for leadership positions because you're not just an employee. You do extra stuff too, which is this club. You see what I mean? So by getting in and helping with some of these things, you can get valuable leadership experience that you can then leverage in any kind of an interview moving forward, whether that be as a co-op or your final interview when you're looking for a job at the end of the day.
Yeah, you reap what you sow.
Okay, that's the value of it, from my point of view. And there's a lot to be said by what kind of a reputation that a club can have and what you can say as far as what type of leadership experience that you got from that.
Yep.
It's very valuable.
So, I mean, hey, we're only here to help. So
Yep. So that's what
you can also follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at CyberAtUC. We got a YouTube channel as well. I think we should change this link, right? We have more than a number of subscribers. So
It turns out we couldn't.
that's so
change the
dumb.
rules.
All right, well we can't be YouTube/channel/CyberAtUC because fuck YouTube. And we got a nice website if you want to check it out.
Stream goes down immediately.
Yeah, stream goes down. All right, take it away, Hayden.
What? You mean
I
Corey?
mean, Corey.
Hayden's asking. You're asking Hayden to end the stream.
blonde hair. Kind of close
They're
enough.
not
The
at
computer,
all
I
like-
turn around to look
They're
at
like
it, and then I turn back and I see the Dell
Right.
logo as it's rebooting, and I'm like, what just happened?
You messed up that Windows instance too.
Well, Corey always has his hair coming up, and Hayden always has his coming down.
What are you talking about?
That's how I know the difference.
Really, that's the only way you can tell us apart. It's the only way you can tell us apart.
There might be a few other ways, but no, it really comes down to your hair's always up. That's what it's just. That's all it is.
Okay.
Isn't that
Okay.
good to know?
Sure.
Let me see.
That all these other things are refreshing.
So, first one, I'm going to talk about something called the Callisto Trojan. So, initially, this was actually submitted to VirusTotal back in 2016. For anyone who doesn't know or may have forgotten, VirusTotal is like this website service that people can submit either malware or what they suspect to be malware onto the website, and you can see which antivirus solutions are going to catch it and which ones aren't. The nice part is that this also gets shared with all of the antivirus software developers like McAfee, Norton, AVG, all that. So they get to see, oh, we didn't catch this, but someone seems to think it's malware. We should definitely maybe look into that. And that was how Callisto got found. Sorry.
Oh, you're.
And
Pointed it
so
back.
it was uploaded to VirusTotal back in 2016, and it hasn't been seen since until a couple of weeks ago. It popped up again, and the way it works is they aren't 100% sure how it got onto people's systems yet, but when they aren't sure how the dropper or the downloader, whatever you want to call it, got onto their system. But once it was there, when it was being installed, it was pretending to be the Intego security solution. I think that's just like an antivirus. I've not actually heard of Intego before. I don't know if they're popular or not, but here, I'll just go ahead and I'll show you a picture of it. But it is pretending to be a very specific version of this software, and so here's what the installer looks like for the malware, and here's what the official version looks like. So very similar. It's just missing a couple of these extra things on the side here. So if you maybe don't really know a lot and you just use Intego because someone who knows more about computers than you said you should definitely use Intego because of whatever reason, you may not notice that this is not a legit version.
This is another like
I
supply
wouldn't
chain
notice the
type
difference
of.
there.
It's not supply chain because it's not.
But they're
It's not-
spoofing an actual installer.
Yeah.
They are pretending to be in.
Yeah.
So what? And then what happens is you go through this apparently realistic looking license agreement. I thought it was a bit wonky just because like everything's in all caps.
I'd be like,
They could have just copied
Parts of
Yeah, I would think they could get a legit Intego.
Well, usually there are parts of license agreements that are in all caps.
Yeah.
There's a law that requires certain things to be conspicuous, and the lawyers of the country have decided conspicuous means all caps.
Most of them just copy.
So,
Yeah. So you go through this license agreement. As is common for the Mac OS, it'll ask for your username and password when you're installing. So you give it that. And then it comes up with this message saying, hey, the installation failed. You should get a new version of the installer from the Intego website. And so you say, oh, okay, this installer disappears. It deletes itself. And you're like, okay, well, I go to the Intego website. I download a new version of the antivirus software. And I install it. Everything's fine. But in the background, what's actually happening is this Trojan's working. And depending on whether or not you have system integrity protection enabled, apparently it's like a software security feature in the Mac OS.
It's really hard to turn off. Unless you're a developer who is pissed off, you would probably have it on if you have a new version.
Yeah, apparently there's a lot of people that have it off, according to the article. I don't know how common that is, but it still has a lot of different stuff that it can do.
If you're not a developer, you don't really have a reason to turn it off.
Yeah, so like it can store a lot of different data, like user login password, keychain storage data, network connection history, your Chrome history. You know, just they can store a lot of stuff, and then you get all of these extra features if they do have SIP disabled.
System integrity protection for Mac is essentially their version of a light Windows Defender.
It's not Windows. It's just sort of like it's like a set of rules that are just really strict. Like even if you use sudo, you cannot edit like /bin
Certain like root
library.
things, even though you might have a root user, you can't do
There's
certain
no
actions.
real good reason for you to have to modify them, and therefore they're locked.
Yeah.
It's like, okay,
It was a pain. It was a pain at my company when it came out. We had stuff symlinked in the bin.
Yeah, so if you have SIP disabled, this is where it gets to like the really like stealthy exfiltration of data, stealing files. That's where all of the really dangerous stuff starts to come in. You guys can go ahead and look into more on just how this works if you're interested. I recommend it.
It's probably the only thing that saves the Mac in total, because installation permissions are system-wide permissions. They're root level access in order to be able to do an install.
This next one, Return of Phantomos, deciphering Crackle. Crackle. I'm not sure. I don't know how that's supposed to be pronounced.
I'm like looking at it. I'm like, there's no way he didn't misspell that, but I bet he didn't.
No, that is how it's spelled. I did check. That is how it's spelled. I'm not 100% sure how it's supposed to be pronounced, but that's how it's spelled.
Probably Crackle, where he changed it to Cry in front of it.
Yeah. So this first started popping up in 2014. It didn't really start to get tracked a lot until about 2016. This is a ransomware software, and they just finally, after 3 years of serious investigation on the part of Kaspersky Labs, got a lot of the command and control servers taken down. They got some of the keys, and they were able to use those in order to generate an improved version of their decryption software, so that a lot of these people who had their computers locked out by this ransomware were able to get it decrypted, at least with some of the more recent versions of the software.
Once again, it's a phishing payload delivery.
Yes, spread through malicious emails. That is like 99.99% of malware tends to get spread through emails still. Email, messaging systems, almost all malware seems to get spread through that. It was coming in through, you know, the typical culprits, PDFs with executables, Microsoft Office files with macros, and the JavaScript.
Yep.
Which was newer. I would almost, I cannot see like any reason you would just click on a JavaScript that was attached to an email, but.
Or a malicious website.
Because
Yeah.
what if it's named like I don't know, resume.pdf.js or something?
Yeah, maybe.
They do
No.
different file names. I've seen this.
Even better is if it's a JavaScript, but it looks like a simple click here.
Yeah, I
You know,
can see
because
that.
that's a problem. Click here can mean click here to go to the websites and do this thing. And so, like, I've gotten the same phishing emails, right, where they say, "Oh, this is Apple support. Thank you for your subscription. Click here to review the receipts."
All it
And
takes.
as long as it says click here, it's phishing.
All it takes is a malicious. All it takes is a malicious website. If it's a malicious website and you go to that website, then you can get popped.
Mhm.
If they have a proper.
Pretty much, if you follow anyone, you're at risk, because no normal business is going to ask you to follow their link. You already
Well,
have
yeah,
access. You
Yeah,
already
they
have
will.
access
They will.
to the site
Dude,
by just
they will.
well.
It may be a
it's
bad
service that they
bad
probably already
practice.
provide you if they have your email.
Companies are always going to have you like redirect to reset your password, this, that, the other. Like you can still do the click here. It's just like you need to look for HTTPS. You need to look for similarly named URLs that are not the same, etc. But
But
and
the
it
industry
could be
itself needs to
compromised.
break
But
from those
what else?
practices.
So the name Phantomos, that's just a name for this type of ransomware that just popped up later instead of calling it Cryackle. I can't imagine why someone would want to change the name from that. Fantomas is the name of a villain from a French film that was produced in 1964 because apparently one version of the malware would change the desktop wallpaper to a picture of this villain, and that's where the name of this malware actually came
Whoever
up.
wrote this malware wanted people to know.
One person who made a change to the malware wanted people to know about this villain.
Yeah.
And evidently it worked. It's just called Fantomas now. And this is a really good example of a malware that got changed a lot over time. This started with just some really basic encryption techniques. Like they were talking about in the article, like when it first came out, we were pretty sure that this was just a test version that accidentally got leaked because the encryption was so simple. Like they eventually were using like just some homebrew encryption techniques, like later on, like that was what they advanced to, and then but near the end they were starting to use some asymmetric RSA encryption in some of their much later iterations. And that is something that you tend to see with malware a lot, is one version comes out and then there's like 1,000 different iterations that pop up in the wild as people get a hold of the source code or they make their own versions of it.
Yeah, when at Siemens we see many different pieces of malware, and it's kind of cool to watch some of them evolve, like Emotet. You just give Emotet a Google sometime. They have gone.
Yeah, so you can follow that link if you want to read up a little bit more about how it evolved its encryption over time. And I've got a couple of pages of recommended reading this week. So this first one, a Bluetooth bug. The last time we talked about this was Blueborn, and that was super crazy. This isn't quite as bad. In fact, there is already a change to the Bluetooth protocol that has been made by, I can't remember the name of the group, the guys who are in charge of Bluetooth protocol. And so you should be expecting at some point a patch, or a firmware patch or software update or something like that sometime in the future. Maybe if you're using an Android phone that isn't a Google Pixel, it might take a couple of months. But everyone else should get one in the next couple of weeks, hopefully. Canada is trying to take some strides in order to combat malicious advertising. So what was happening is they had this system where I go to a website, and this website says, hey, I've got these spaces for ads here. But instead of using like Google ads or something, I go to this company and I say, hey, you give me money and you can sell this ad space for whatever you can get it for, and you just give me a set amount of money every month. And so what they were doing is they were doing things like auctioning off the space. So as soon as a visitor visits the web page, that eyeball click view, whatever you want to call it, is then being auctioned off to companies, and whoever the highest bidder is for that view gets to put out their ad. And they had a lot of problems with some malicious ads linking to websites that were just there to spread malware. And Canada's actually taken a lot of steps, and you can read more on that, on how to stop that. British Airways had to cancel flights for like an entire afternoon because of an IT issue that they are not willing to talk about, but they are saying is not their fault. It is the fault of one of their IT service providers. So that might be something we get to hear more about soon.
I see Heathrow. Heathrow is like your slots at Heathrow are like, they're so expensive. Wasting a slot at Heathrow is just like...
Yeah, Heathrow, it said, was the biggest airport in Europe. So...
And Heathrow, they have to close at night because they're too close to residences, and so they only operate from like I don't know, like 5 a.m. till like 10 p.m. or something. And so they have a flight take off every 90 seconds, or is it every 45 or every 90? And it's like you have a set slot. And it's like it's
this was
you
like,
can lose the slot if you're not using it.
Serious.
This was about 4+ hours that they were down, and then they closed.
I wonder if it's security related.
That's kind of what they were saying. And this actually came after they had a few days earlier, a fire got started in one of their watchtowers, and they had to evacuate that and shut the airport down for that too. So they are having a lot of problems. Moving on, Google Chrome will now mark any website as of yesterday that is not HTTPS will now be marked as insecure Hayden was talking a little bit more about this yesterday. Did you want to?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, it's you might not have gotten I haven't gotten the update yet because they sort of roll them out gradually, but it's out and it was originally they had it so that HTTPS sites were secure and then it was just nothing for HTTP. Then they made it so it was not secure if there was a password field or other foreign fields on the page. That was a couple months ago, and now finally it's, even if there's not a form on the page, if you're not HTTPS, it's marked.
Which browser is this?
Chrome.
They incrementally did it because they put out almost a year ago that they were going to do this because they all believed that going end-to-end encryption is the right way for the entire industry to go. So they already said that they were going to do that, and they've just been rolling it.
And actually, in September, on secure websites, they're going to remove the word secure because the expectation is it's their fault.
Always so. Right.
Until something new comes out that's more secured.
On that,
HTTPSS.
can I add something else? Also, Google, in addition, their Gmail service, okay, you can no longer go from Outlook and remotely connect to Google's email service because they consider Outlook to be less secure than their own Gmail service, and they won't go down in security.
Yeah, I think
I
that's
still-
yeah. No, I actually had to change that setting, and that is a pain in the ass to try and change
I
too.
still trust
But,
Google.
but I trust Microsoft even less by many ways.
So when you explain to me what
Microsoft
certificates are,
Really?
I know like when I click on the security, it shows like
Yeah.
certificate.
So basically, there's these companies out there. There's like a handful of them called certificate authorities. And they're companies that are given the authority to issue certificates. Wow, that sounds stupid. But it's basically like Microsoft, Google, Mozilla, all the browsers that sort of come together, and they all basically have the same list of certificate authorities. And basically, so you go, if you are a website owner and you want a HTTPS website, you go to one of these certificate authorities and you buy a certificate, and they will, by some process, verify that you are indeed the owner of whatever.com.
And that certificate's used to encrypt communications
Yeah.
between
Yeah,
you and that website. And it's not just that it encrypts, but it's that it is a trusted certificate. So you can have a certificate that you make, that you sign yourself, and that you put on your own website for HTTPS, but other people that visit that website have to say, oh, well, I trust this unauthorized, or what's the word?
Unauthenticated?
Unauthenticated, I guess, certificate. It wasn't approved by an authority. So it's essentially.
So certain companies can create it creates certificates that says, yes, I am this company.
And every single bit of data that travels from them to you is encrypted with that certificate, because it's like the certificate is really it's like a cryptographic thing, and it's so it's not only like it's legit, but the data you can verify, like your browser verifies that the data does indeed match what they sent. So it can't be interfered with or intercepted.
You can go down a rabbit hole of website. Cool.
So Google, Facebook, Twitter, and like some other social media website are getting together to try and create this data transfer protocol so that you can transfer your information from one social media service to the other, et cetera, just trying to make that easier. But they're trying to be really careful with that because they don't want to violate any of those laws that the EU recently passed. Yeah, that.
GDPR.
This could be a really big one. Julian Assange, I don't care. The founder of WikiLeaks is getting ready to most likely lose his political asylum sometime next week, they think.
Russia?
Ecuador.
Ecuador.
Yeah, he's been in Ecuador.
So he's going to go back to Russia?
No, he's not in Ecuador. He's in the
No, Snowden is in
I think it's
Russia.
Snowden.
Yeah, you're right, I am.
He's in the like Ecuador embassy in like the UK or something.
They were moving out
so
furniture the
he
other day.
loses
I
that,
think
they
he's
kick him
dead.
back into the UK.
I think he's been dead. I mean, they had a raid on the
He
asylum.
made public appearances. Like they've had him do like press conferences out the window of the
He's not
Ecuador
dead.
embassy.
He's not dead
Last time he's
because
done that was months and months.
he'll get arrested.
I
He'll get
feel
arrested the instant he comes out.
Yeah.
It'll be a big spectacle.
I think he's been killed.
I don't think he's dead.
We'll see.
I think you're crazy.
I feel like it would have been.
Anyone's seen him.
It was. I feel like it would have been more effort than he would have been worth to kill him at that point. Anyways,
Plus, too much publicity for
yeah.
to be able
So apparently 72% of CEOs think it's okay to steal corporate intellectual properties from their previous employers, and this is just a little bit talking about like why that is a super serious cybersecurity concern for a lot of people who are trying to get their company up to speed in terms of cybersecurity practice. Why the thought that these CEOs can just why a lot of business leaders think that they can just, because they are in charge of these companies, take this information out with them and go somewhere else with it, and why that's such a big problem. And then an HR firm called, I think it's called like Copyright or something like that, they got breached. Virginia Bank has been breached twice in the last 8 months, and the hackers have been able to steal $2.4 million. And both breaches occurred because of phishing emails. So I don't know who it is that's opening these emails, but someone really needs to give them a talk about safe email practices.
I don't know how you do that.
Like really badly. And in this last one, I think is pretty cool.
a lot of these banks are just
Google has not had an employee's account breached by a phishing email in over 2 years now or something like that, because they have switched off of using passwords and the standard two-factor authentication where they send like a code to your phone or whatever. They've moved off of that to using these little like USB dongles. AJ was
YubiKeys.
Yeah.
So I have one in my laptop here. But you know how if you've worked at a place with a RFID card with a chip in it, you put the chip in your computer to be able to connect to an account? That's all they're doing.
Yep.
That's their YubiKeys, their card, their authentication card. Had special certificate on it.
So I feel like you might start to see more of these in the future.
It's a different form of two-factor, essentially.
Yep.
It's two-factor.
And this article goes into a lot more detail on how it's a different form of two-factor authentication. So if you want to know more about how these work, that's the article to check out.
How do you lose that?
Well, I mean, they need to have a pin to use it.
Steal it. Take it and run.
So if you lose it, they have to find out the pin. It's an 8-digit pin.
How do you get it if you lose it?
Well, if I lose it, then I mean I have to give about.
He cries a lot.
My certificates. Gotta get new one. But I mean, I keep this in my laptop all the times. You know, if you don't.
So the way to run your Linux block securely is to open all ports for all traffic.
To open what?
Is to download
I do like the idea of using the
UFW
USB,
and just allow all by default.
right? So that type of thing.
Hang
But I'm
on.
also
Give me a sec. I want to make it so that my
It's not
screen
USB.
here is the same as the one up
It
there.
works in USB slot, but
It
it's
uses
not.
the USB port, but it's just a
Yeah, it's
like a certificate on a chip, right?
Yeah, it would be the same thing as if you plug the card reader into your USB port and then put your card in the card reader.
Right.
It's pretty much the way to go.
Yeah.
Hey, there we go. Look at this. This is oh god, is that readable?
Nice job choosing blue on black.
Hey, you know what? I didn't choose that. That's just
I think the important half of the room can read it.
yeah. I can't read it all there. Okay. By the way, is my computer showing this? Okay. Sorry for being the live stream guy and the guy presenting.
Could just put normal slides.
Well, I had to use my laptop anyway. That has nothing to do with it.
Well, that's pretty cool. Where'd you get that?
Online, it's $50.
$50 for the
One of
small.
these.
The small.
Yeah.
You can get one that's a little bit bigger, like
Those ones are
like $20.
put on the keychain. I'm probably just gonna do
Really,
that.
I think so. All right, cool. All right. I never make any mistakes. Okay.
Never.
All right. So this is not going to be the most structured, organized talk I've ever given. It's sort of just here's some cool stuff. Context is I have a server at home that's sort of like my hobby project. If you want, you can go look up the specs of it. But I have Debian on it, and I have so much torrented crap. No, this is on YouTube. Just kidding. No, but I use it as a NAS, and I've also sort of
I worked at a startup for 3 years, and I was like we had like 2 developers, so I was sort of the DevOps guy. You sort of wear a lot of hats when you have like 2 people doing dev.
Now it's just network attached storage.
Yeah, it's just a giant place where I have just tons of movies and TV and
Linux
whatnot.
ISOs.
Huh?
You have a bunch of
Linux ISOs. That's right. R/data hoarder reference right
There's
there.
no torrents. It's all Linux ISOs.
Yeah, I did. No, it's torrents of Linux ISOs.
Yeah, not movies.
So anyway, the broad security goals I have is like principle of least privilege, which I think most of you in here have heard of. Everything should only have access to what it needs and nothing else. So like the web server shouldn't be able to access like, I don't know, some other stuff. It's like each component should be in its own little bubble. And I'm going to go through talking about like network and applications and files, like doing this in each of those sort of regions. And then also you gotta keep your updates coming in. So one of the coolest tools, I've been messing with this a lot today. I already had it, was using it. It's IP tables, which is just Linux's firewall, and it's like it seems like that's like just boring, like it's firewall, but it can do so much crazy stuff. So basically, it's you have these 5 chains that are a series of rules. There's 5 of them, but input and output are the main ones that matter. And you basically just define what's allowed, what's not, and you can control it so minutely. It's ridiculous. The most common configuration, if you want to be like secure but you don't want like your life to be difficult, is to just reject all new connections from the outside, except for ones coming, like if you have a web server, you'd open port 80, which is what HTTP runs on, and stuff like that, and then allow all output because your computer needs to be able to connect to the world. But you can get more strict than that. You can get more custom than that.
You can basically block everything and only use SSH. I only want to talk over port 22.
Yeah. So here's like a pretty typical looking version of what this file might be. This, you can ignore the first 4 lines pretty much, but it says on the input chain, if it's a connection that was already established, then allow it, because if the connection, we already let it in before, then it's good. If it's ICMP, which is like ping and traceroute type stuff, allow it. If it's localhost, allow it. And if it's SSH, HTTP, or HTTPS, allow it. And reject everything else.
And say if you were like making a network that you wanted to make harder for people to get a foothold in it and kind of see what you have, you would probably reject ping. Say, oh, I don't want people to be able to do a ping scan.
I think blocking ping is silly.
But if you block ping, you block the way of someone just saying, okay, I'm going to do a quick ping scan, and I'm going to get all the IPs, and then I can do targeted scans.
Yeah, it's certainly a thing you can do. So
But
let's
for
see.
a home server, it's overkill.
Yeah, and when you're saying
God.
that if the connection already exists, allow it, that
Huh?
means that if the user creates it, that's
What
where,
is-
where you're
did I
going to have
not
permissions
produce
to
the
create
content?
it, since it's already created, allow it through on inbound.
Let's see. So I was gonna go. This is my actual server. I'm messing here. Let me make this bigger. Jesus. Let's see. So I was gonna go to the rules are stored in. I think this is the right place. Yeah. If I ever do a command and you don't know what I'm doing, please ask. Because I'm trying to like sort of show.
What's your password?
Yeah, I'm not telling you that part. You can screw off with that. This is the config I use, and so it's a little bit more complicated. I have a few more services open, and you notice I have all this bullshit going on in the output. And what that's doing is my torrent client, Deluge.
For torrenting Linux ISOs.
For Linux ISOs, I don't want anyone to be able to see my Linux ISOs, so I have it connect to the world via VPN. But I don't want the entire device to be on VPN all the time because I want to be able to access it from my home IP address. So I have it so that by default the system doesn't use VPN. But then the torrent client, Deluge, is forced to use the VPN. So I actually have rules. Deluge runs as a separate user account, and so the ID number for that on my computer happens to be 978. So I say if the packet comes from user 978, then only allow, this is DNS, and it's like actual control things so that I can access it. Only allow those to go out on the normal connection, and then otherwise force it to use TUN 0, which is tunnel 0, it's the VPN connection. And so if the VPN connection goes down, Deluge can't access the internet at all. It's just completely cut off. So there's no chance of anyone seeing that all the Linux ISOs I'm grabbing.
All of the legally obtained Linux ISOs.
Yes. So that's one like cool like really specific thing. Like I never would have guessed that a firewall could like figure out what user packets came from. Some other stuff that I sort of looked up when I was doing this. It has an extension for OS fingerprinting, so it can make a pretty good guess about what OS a packet came from. So this is a rule that would block connections only from Windows devices. If you just are like, no, like get a better OS. So this is, unfortunately, I was messing around and I couldn't get this to work, and I was like, I have to present this in a few hours, like I'm just gonna give up. But the next cool thing I got, it does work. So it can just match random strings in the packet. So here's a rule, and I will actually run this rule on my thing, and here I'll go through what it's doing as well.
Banana 69.
I had to pick a random string that I didn't think would actually be legitimately used because
really
I'm the
random string, Hayden?
You know?
I believe that specific string was used in UC's porn firewall.
Hey now. Okay. So this says if it's a TCP connection, which is what TCP is, the protocol underneath HTTP. It's under like most things. It's under HTTP. It's under DNS. It's under whatever email protocol. It's sort of like the internet is, if you don't know the OSI model. This is getting way off topic. It's like the facilitator of that traffic. So if it's any sort of TCP,
it's a protocol, and you can put specific information in different protocols. TCP is for Internet of Things traffic. SMTP can go over TCP.
This is
but
getting
it's
too off
typically
topic.
referred to as
The point is, it doesn't even matter. It doesn't even matter that's TCP, because then the next rule I have is destination port 80, which means HTTP, because that's what I have running on port 80. That's the standard port for HTTP. And then it says use the string. Why am I pointing at my screen? You can't see. Use the string extension right here. Match string. That's what -m. This -algo thing is the string matching algorithm that it uses. I just used the default there. And then it looks for the string banana 69, and if that appears in a request, then it rejects it. So here I'm gonna actually hit enter and run this.
Can you ping? Are you
run this rule? And so now I'm gonna go. So like, if I go, this is the address for my thing. If I hit like a normal URL, it loads fine. And if I go like /ASTF, it's a 404 page, but it loads. If I go /banana 69. The connection was reset.
Oh shit! Sorry. Don't be looking at my bananas.
Yeah, and if it appears anywhere in here, actually, if it's like even that, it'll. So it's matching that in the packet. But this would also block like unencrypted emails that had it in it, and it was just. This is completely not useful. It's just an example of how.
This is useful.
Firewalls can be used.
Banana 69.
Not banana 69,
yeah.
But the ability to block strings. That's how like intrusive.
It only works on unencrypted stuff. Like you notice, I went to like a weird address because if I didn't put the alt there, then it would be HTTPS, and the trick wouldn't work.
How do you undo that command?
Oh, it's actually when I'm gonna. Oh, I didn't mean to quit that. Ah, shit.
It should just be in a text file or
So the way IP tables works is it keeps its list of rules in memory, but you also have them on your disk somewhere, and so you can have it load a rule either by running the command and just like putting a rule in on the fly, but that won't be saved. And so what I'm going to do to clear that rule is I am just going to run the restore command, which is this. So it'll wipe what the rules are in memory and go back to what's in the file.
Rules.v4 is essentially, if you had that in rules.v4, you would have almost that exact same string from input.
Yeah.
In the file.
Yeah, like the whole
command.
If I pull up v4, like you can see, this part doesn't appear, but otherwise these lines are pretty much exactly the same.
It'd just be -I and put PTCP at the bottom there, or at the top.
Yeah.
At the top.
Yeah, I'd probably put it at the top and do -A, which is append instead of insert. This, I had to do -I because I wanted it to put it at the top rather than the bottom. So that it would be, because this is banana 69, you got to block that. I don't care about anything. It's got to be the first rule that gets run.
If you're not blocking banana 69, you do something wrong.
Let's see. So the other thing I wanted to, there's so many things. Like I just wanted to pull up. If you go to the man page for it, which is just it's a command. If you don't know it, you type man and then the name of a command, and you get a manual page for it. So that's what it's short for. This is a web page of it, which is just nicer to read than looking at the terminal.
There's also SS64.
What?
There's also SS64.
Yeah, this one I particularly like. On most sites, the IP tables extensions page is a separate man page, and for whatever reason, Linux.die.net put them on the same page. So I was like, cool, that'll be easier to present with. But like they have all these extensions, so it's like you can just like scroll through. Like here, that's a good one. Like you can. Oh, here, I know. You can have it so that a certain percentage of packets are randomly dropped. You could, like, if you wanted to like troll like your sysadmin friend, you could have a rule that like 1% of packets get dropped. Or like there's also nth, so you can make it like every 50th packet gets dropped. And it
diabolical.
Well, let's say that you had a website and you were just wanting to make it look like the connection was really bad.
Yeah, you could do something like, and actually do the use of the random and nth is you could use that if you say you were trying to do load balancing and you had two web servers and you wanted half the packets to go to one and half to go to the other so that they distribute the load, and then you could use the random or the nth thing. What else is there? There's so much. It was like I wanted to go through. Oh, you know what I wanted to pull up actually? I forgot about this. This is jumping back to the OS fingerprinting, but this, let's see. This is the link I want. Here we go. So this is the file of all the fingerprints they have, and they have it for like every OS. So here are fingerprints for a bazillion different versions of Linux. Then there's FreeBSD, which Mac is based on, so it sort of has you can't really fingerprint it separate from FreeBSD, but like, unless you're dealing with like super nerds, if you see FreeBSD, it's probably Mac, because who runs FreeBSD? All these different ones, some of them, there's no way you've heard of all of them. You might have heard of some of them. Then we got all the Windows, and you can identify individual versions of Windows too.
Let me just spoof my OS to like Windows 98.
Yeah, and then you get into like weird stuff like Next Step, like that's like the predecessor to Mac OS before Apple bought Next, and all these like crazy things. No one runs IBM's OS anymore, I don't think. The Amiga classic system there, and then you get into stuff like specific firewalls and stuff. It's where's the one? There's one I really want. There's one Nmath has a certain fingerprint to how it runs, so you can actually identify Nmath with this and only block Nmath.
It's a fancy signature.
Yeah. So it's these specific types of scans that Nmath does. So that means you could prevent someone from monitoring your system. I might actually try and get this working now. And there was one I wanted to. Oh yeah, here's the Dreamcast and the PS2. If you want. What?
Commodore 64.
Oh, is that on here? Where is it?
I don't know. Control F. You can't find it.
I doubt it.
Commodore.
Were you going to talk about
I think you could do it. This is just the list of ones that people have already gotten around to writing.
Get in my Commodore, nobody will see it coming.
This is like a niche. Like someone wrote this in an app. Like this particular extension is like for the fun of it one afternoon. It's not used too much though.
Although
I'm surprised they have this many fingerprints. Honestly.
It still operates off 5 1/4 floppy inch, so it's not really too capable. And
by the time you finish one
the CPU I'm thinking is maybe 4 megahertz tops, 8-bit. So
good luck doing more than a ping scan.
Yeah, it'll take forever to do.
So that's IP tables is like a really crucial tool for like the low level networking if you want to work at like the TCP type level or even like lower than that. But more often you're working with web servers, which is like everything is a freaking web server now. It's like any app that you install on your server, it probably has a web server. Like I run Plex, that has a web server. Deluge has a web server. It's like anything useful you want to run odds are the interface for it is a web
Have you
thing.
used UFW at all?
UF.
The uncomplicated firewall. It's just like a front end.
Yeah.
Oh, I haven't seen that. No.
UFW is just a manager for IP
UFW.
tables.
Anyway.
It's just a manager, but it has some commands that you can give that allow you to have some extra, like
It's just
I'll have
IP
to
tables.
talk about this
IP
later.
tables wrapper.
Specifically, like what they say here for the difference is like rules and facilities that allow arbitrary packages to provide their own rule sets that users can easily enable or disable via the UFW app. Basically, you can make some like more complicated temporary rules.
With
like,
IP tables, you can
packages.
you can chain rules. So you can you saw there was I didn't get into that. The pre-routing. You can have a rule. You can have certain types of packets get marked on one chain, and then on another chain you recognize that mark and do something else with them. I could talk here for actually I'm not that knowledgeable about IP tables, so I couldn't talk for hours. But someone smarter than me could.
The thing that's beautiful about IP tables is that there are tools out there that are the building blocks for most systems. A lot of other systems, IP tables is the building block for a lot of intrusion detection systems and other firewall applications. It's one of those basic building blocks. If you know IP tables, you can do almost anything that you could do with another more well-developed tool. Not
What a
well-developed.
lot of those tools end up doing is they're basically just saying, hey, tell me something you want to do, and I'll make the IP tables rule set that'll do that for you.
Right.
So in a couple of clicks or a couple of lines, I can do 30 pages of IP table rules for you.
which is what I'm used to, because the first thing that I do, I have a script that I run on any Linux install, and that first initial script, first and foremost, is UFW shut the firewall completely down, right? From any external stuff just walking in, and then it sets some default things that lock down the router, lock down IP4, lock down various things, that turns everything back on.
Yep.
Yeah. So anyway, I wanted to talk about web servers, and I'm going to be sort of talking about things in the context of Apache, which is a really popular one. If you're cool and new, you might use Nginx, or if you're really cool and new, you might use Caddy. But I'm old school, and Apache works, and I can't be bothered to learn something newer. So, but all the concepts of this stuff is the same. It's just the config files won't match up. So if anything you're putting on a web server, you gotta have HTTPS. You gotta get a certificate. Nowadays, certificates are free, so you have no excuse. With Let's Encrypt, which I think most people in the room know about, but it's one of the certificate authorities. But they are free finally after 2 decades of having to pay a premium for certificates. There's a free one, and you can just literally, this is CertBot's website. You just literally say I'm using, and you pick your server, and the OS I'm running is whatever, and it will give you the exact instructions you need to do it. And so I can sort of go into, if I go to my what am I trying to do? If I go to Apache's config on my server, here I'm going to clear the screen. And I go to sites enabled. This is I have multiple different sites running on here, and this is just how Apache organizes them. This is how they're organized on Debian. For some reason, Debian organizes them different. You might have seen vhost.d instead of sites enabled if you've worked with any other Linux thing. But so here, the main address for my server is home.shift.io, and so the config file for that is right here. And we can see there's a whole bunch of crap in here. But we can see if I get down to when it's the HTTPS stuff, which we can tell because it's 443 right here. And that's the HTTPS thing. We've got these certificates. Yeah. And so we've got these certificates here that are from Let's Encrypt. And, oh God. And it includes, I didn't even write these rules. Actually, the tool, CertBot will literally run the tool and it inserts the rules for you. If you don't trust it, you can do it yourself, but it will just do it for you. And if I go, let's see, if I go to my cron config, which cron is just a tool that lets you have things run at a set time every day, every week, whatever. We can see. Oh yeah, I have a more complicated setup. What is this? drinking. I have it every day at 5:24 and a.m. and p.m. I guess they tell you to pick a random time so that they don't have everyone murdering their servers at 4 a.m. on the dot. So that's the random time I picked, I guess. I run this script, and let's see, I'll go pull up that script. So this is the command. It's just certbot renew. This tells it not to log so much crap. This tells it not to update itself, I guess. And then I have this special rule. I have Plex on here, which is it's sort of like it lets you run your own Netflix, and it can't support the normal format of certificate, so I have to do all this bullshit to give it a certificate it can use. And it's I wrote this like a year ago, and I don't know how it works, and I don't care. So mine's a little more complicated. But most people would just have in their cron tab, they just have certbot renew and none of this other crap. So that's how I've got that set up. So let's see. Where am I? Yeah, so that's certbot. Yeah, and it's like super extensible. You can get Let's Encrypt on anything. I've had like the most bizarre setups when I've had like a weird server that didn't have like Apache or something, and you can just get it to work on anything. People have ported it to everything. So the next thing you probably want to do is if you have a service besides just like a normal web server that just serves like files and pages, that you installed and you don't really trust, you might put it behind a reverse proxy, which means instead of the outside world connecting to its server directly, you proxy it through Apache or Nginx or whatever, and that way Apache's sort of the middleman protecting you. I do not actually have, and I have an active one, but the server for it is dead. So if I go to this is my little home page for my server, and so I had this software called Calibra, and I was like, I do not trust that Calibra is secure because it's sort of obscure, and so I have it proxied behind here, so it runs on a Apache, and you can see, yeah, it's down, but so that's another way to be secure. And so like oftentimes if you're finding like obscure software or whatever, it's just there's no consideration for security. So today this is the funniest coincidence that I'm doing this talk on the same day that this happened. So I subscribe on Reddit to this subreddit home server, which is just like stuff related to servers, and I see this guy's posted, he has a thing to make a page kind of like this for your things so that you can access all these things, and he's like, download this and put it on your server, and I'm like, this looks kind of sketchy, it's just like I don't trust this guy. And sure enough, I start poking around in the source code, and here's his PHP code, and it's let's see, let me make this bigger. So it writes like all its data to like a file called config.json, which is in this folder data. The problem is this folder data is public, and config.json has your password in plain text. So you can just, if you find someone who's running this software, you can go to their IP address /data/config.json. There's their password in plain text, and then you can edit it, and you can then fill these, like you could, if you wanted to, you could just keep sending configs with just random data in it, because the thing doesn't check that you passed the right keys. So you could just fill someone's hard drive with just garbage data, anything, something like that. And so this is the kind of thing that you want to have behind. You don't want this just sitting out on the
some authentication method, right?
What?
You want to
I'm about to get to authentication. You do reverse proxy and you add authentication. I'm going to get to that.
That's
and it's like,
oh
wow, I've got 18 upvotes now. This is my post telling people, please don't use this. It will screw up your server. But yeah, so plain text passwords are really, really bad. You need to store them with a cryptographic hash, and having plain text passwords downloadable from public. The thing is, I thought this was an accident, and I looked.
Fucking rip this guy a new one.
I thought this was an accident, and I looked in the JavaScript code that runs on the web page, and let's see if I can find it. He also has some JavaScript that checks the password, so he's checking it in your browser He's got code running on your computer saying, does this password match? And it's like you could just change that to true. You could instead of it saying, you could just edit this and change it to true on the browser, and then it would work. So it's
can just basically they can just download the JavaScript, can they?
Yeah, they can just edit it. So it's just
They do run the job.
you cannot do authentication on the client side because that means you have to trust the client to authenticate themselves. You're basically
And
trusting
hide the information too.
you're trusting them to check that their password's right. Is basically how that works. So yeah, I'm glad this has gotten traction. At first, people were like, "This is stupid. It's not a problem." And I'm like, "No, this will screw you up."
People on Reddit don't know what they're talking about 90% of the time.
The network was a closed network that only you have access to, maybe.
Yeah, that's what one person said. And I was like, "Yeah, but this guy made it very clear that you should make this public." And
That's at the core.
So what's
one
the
of the big
authentication?
problems, though,
Yeah,
with
so I was gonna
cybersecurity
say,
industry itself, though.
if you're reverse proxying something, that's good. That means that the server is directly exposed, but you want to add something more. So you want to add authentication, and Apache or Nginx or whatever can do that. If you've ever been on a website here, I'll show on mine, and you get a pop-up. Oh shoot, I'm logged in. Let me.
Boo.
Shut up.
Boo.
Why can I not log out?
TV shows. Wait a second.
No.
No, it's
That's
Does it
how
look like
he's
Linux
hiding
ISOs?
his Linux ISOs. He's hiding them in folders.
Oh, under photography and
Exactly.
all legally.
Each one of those is code for a different type of
Well,
Linux.
ROMs,
Those
I'm
are all
assuming it's
operating
game
systems.
ROMs.
Shoot, can I really
No,
not
that's
unauthenticate? This is hilarious. Maybe if I try a different domain name.
Linux admins.
There we go. Okay, that's the pop-up I wanted to get. If you ever see a site that gives you a pop-up like this is called HTTP Basic Authentication. And it's just a username and password that's built into HTTP rather than when you go to a website and they have like a custom form that's using like JavaScript and whatever. But this is part of HTTP. And so Apache, let me find my tab. Apache can do this natively. So I'm going to go back to my Apache config. Here, I'm going to clear the screen. And so I'm going to go into, so the rules that I have that define that shared page where all my Linux ISOs are in this file, 001 shared. So I'm going to open that. And here we see, I've got a whole bunch of crap in here, but here are the rules that are relevant. So I have to set like a name for it. And I have a file that has passwords in it and a file that has groups, and it says, this says that it requires that it either be a valid user from that password file or that it be localhost or my home network. And so if it doesn't meet that, then you will get this, unauthorized. So, and if you put this on a reverse proxy, that means if you had that garbage piece of software that was super insecure behind a reverse proxy and behind HTTP basic auth, you would technically be safe. I mean, I'd still recommend you not use that thing because it's like you put one that's like taping over like a gaping hole with a Band-Aid.
It's still good practice to have a reverse proxy with authentication.
Yeah. So this keeps me super safe. And if you want to see what those two, I keep pointing at my laptop screen. I'm tell me if you don't know what I'm pointing at. If you want to see what those two password files are, one of them I prepared a redacted version that doesn't have the real hashes, but this is it's just got.
They're typically encrypted.
Yeah. These are hashes. This looks exactly like what the real hashes look like. It's just I keyboard mashed and replaced my actual hashes. But you can see I have like an account for my family, account for my friend Jeff, and then my account. And then in the file HE groups, it defines family is Schiff Hayden. So if I go back to the, actually here, I'm just gonna to this file. These are the main rules for the main directory. But if I go down to the bottom, these are, you can ignore all that crap. But I didn't want my friend Jeff to be looking at my family photos because that's just kind of weird. I trust him, but it's just I'm just like, so I added an additional rule that not only do you have to be a valid user, but you have to be family. And then this doesn't even exist anymore, but there was a part that I didn't even want my family getting into.
Your Linux ISOs.
No, it actually, that totally sounded like it was porn. It's not porn, I swear. It was raw access to all the drives rather than just the ones I wanted to
Whatever you want to tell us, baby. whatever you need to say, baby.
I would have deleted that, but I didn't notice it before. Let's see. Where am I? So that's how you can sort of make web services really dang secure. Yeah, that's about all I got on. Those are the main things anyway that I consider important for securing web stuff. Another thing you probably have on a server, at least if it's Linux, is SSH. Most people don't. I actually do have a desktop monitor and keyboard that I can hook up to this, but most of the time you don't have that for a server. And so SSH is how you access it, the terminal, and you gotta turn off password logins, which means you have to do key-based authentication, which is similar to certificates, except it's without the certificate authority. It's just the it's just sort of you.
It's like
it's like a personal. So like you create your own certificate and put it in there, and the server knows to only trust you. And you also want to turn off the root account. Root account, just never have a root account enabled.
Bullshit. You should have a root account.
No, you should not.
Yeah, you do if you want to do root action shit.
No, sudo. You should always just use sudo.
You should use sudo, but there's some things where working in root's so much more convenient.
If you turn root login off, if you turn that off for a Kali Linux, you're never getting into that Linux ever again.
You
cannot walk
Kali
into Kali
can't function without just
It
being
can't
root
function
all the
without
time.
root.
It's the
It's
modern
Ubuntu
practice on Kali you wouldn't have on a server though. The modern practice on like public facing machines is you don't have root enabled. That is considered the best practice.
On public facing machines, yes.
Yeah, public
like
facing machines.
like it's like everyone's updating. Like CentOS, and CentOS up till version 6, the default account was root. Now the default account is CentOS, and it doesn't come with a root account. It's becoming increasingly the norm. Just the other day we were installing cubes, and it had an option to turn on root, but it was off by default. So you don't want to have a root account.
Unless you know what you're doing.
Are there, as far as the firewall goes and stuff like that, I know that the root capability is found in those IP tables, which is, maybe domain names that are excluded, where you don't connect based on domain names and stuff like that. Is it easy to find like a database of bad domain names and things like that?
Yeah, I have like 5 million on
I know you do. You built that yourself.
No, I
from the
didn't.
ground up.
No, I didn't build
How
all
did
of
you get
it. A lot of the domains that I've gotten. I can do a talk about that.
I want to talk
in the
about
future.
that later on.
All right.
I'll talk about that.
All
That's
right.
a rabbit hole you get me started on. I will not shut the fuck up.
But anyway, this is the file that is like OpenSSH's config file, which is what like no one uses any other version of SSH really these days, at least not on Linux. And so these are the rules you have to put in to turn off all that crap. I've been doing interactive demos for stuff, but I do not want to mess with SSH while I am I am 20 minutes away from this computer, because if you screw up your SSH config while you're away, then it's like, oh, that the demo would be prematurely over if I messed that up. So I'm just showing it in the slides.
Yeah.
This is actually something I haven't implemented on my server yet that I should, but it's like I just don't have the time. So SE Linux, it was made actually by some people at the NSA, and it's still maintained by them. And it's sort of, if you want your server to be super secure, this is sort of the next level, and increasingly it's becoming expected. Common practice for a long time has been the first thing you do when you spin up CentOS has it enabled by default. And the first thing you do when you spin up a CentOS instance is turn off SE Linux. But that paradigm is slowly shifting, and DevOps.
Shifts to deny all?
Huh?
You said shifts
To deny all.
Oh.
From allow
Yeah.
all.
Type words are hard. I'm tired. Leave me alone. But yeah, it's by the way, it's SE's security enabled Linux is what it stands for. But so this is it. It basically, the paradigm on Linux and really on like all computer systems is that the main source of like protection on files is the access list. So if I do list and I have it show me a little bit more info, that's what those ALH does. Each one of these files has a set of rules here that says the first one says if it's a directory or file, and this says the owner of this file can read and write it, but the dash is where execute would be. And then people in the group of the owner can read but not write or execute, and the rest of the world can read but not execute. And then some of these files will be, and that's basically how you define permissions in Linux for files. So let's go somewhere that's more interesting.
That's actually like binary. So if you worked in chmod.
Yeah, the command for this is
777.
chmod.
If you look at the zeros and ones of the number 7 and binary, it would line up with what fields of those 3 would be popular.
Yeah, so this would be
So it would be
this would be like this RW and then R and R would be 644. If we that's like what the permission is set on that. That's the command you would do to set it to that permission. And if we do that in binary, that comes out to 110, 100, and 100, which you'll see exactly matches the pattern over here. So that's how those numbers work.
It's kind of a cool little thing. I don't know.
Yeah. So here, let me go somewhere where I have more interesting permissions than this. I'm not going downloads. Let's see.
You have
What
to go
folder
all
is
the way up
least
to-
incriminating?
No,
Is
you gotta go all the way up to home.
huh?
Go all the way up to
Got the idea.
home.
Yeah. I just wanted to show because in that case, like here, these files, some of them are owned by Hayden, and some of them are owned by Deluge.
Those are some weird names for your Linux ISOs.
Yeah,
It
fuck
does
off.
not look like Linux synthesizers.
But they're all in the group shared, and so I have it so that the owner can read, write, execute, and the group can read, write, execute. So it doesn't matter which ones of these are owned by Deluge and which are owned by me. Either user can read, write, or execute them.
Is
So
Stranger Things Debian based or?
can you fuck off? But anyway, SE Linux. This talk has gone so off the rails. We're like 15 minutes over. I'm not even done. SE Linux goes beyond that because here's an example. Fucking Dennis, that fucking prick who's always screwing things up. He stores his bitcoins in a file and he sets it to 644, which means anyone can read it. Idiot. And then it turns out that the web server is compromised and someone tries to read that file. But with SE Linux, the web server is specifically restricted to only its folders, which is like these folders right here. And so the web server, even though that file is readable by everyone, cannot read it. It's an additional layer of security on top of the access control list. And this is, I just came up with the stupidest example here with, I picked a name of no one in the club. If there's any Dennis's watching, I'm sorry. But huh?
Dennis Sunny, yeah.
This is more critical of like you accidentally set the wrong permissions on like your SSH key or something like that, or just like anything, or like if you had say like a web server and a database server on the same machine, and one of them got compromised, the other system wouldn't get compromised. It really isolates everything, and so this guide is really good. It goes into a lot more detail than I've gone into here, but it's so every service has their own set of rules that they can access, and it works really well. It's just a little bit more. People, the first time they see an SE Linux error, they're like, "This is bullshit," and then they Google how to turn off SE Linux. And admittedly, I did not. I think on Debian it's not default yet, but so yeah, someday I might have this. It's the big trick is SE Linux is easy enough to like do it as you go. If you try to put it in after the fact, you're gonna have a bad time. So you want to be doing it from day one, because you're just gonna have everything breaking, and it might be you don't realize something's broken for like weeks. So you just want to do it from the start. And yeah. And the last thing I talked about, I was going to do patches. This is only relevant to Debian and Ubuntu systems, but there's actually a cron executable for APT. So if left to my own devices, I will never remember to go in and run apt-get upgrade to upgrade all my software every once in a while. But you also you don't want to have everything automatically update. The worry there is that something would break in the middle of production. Like you would imagine if like Google had that and something updated and broke in their production and it was automatic, like it would be bad. So cron apt and well, let's get out of this directory. It allows you to select your what updates you get with a little bit more precision. So the setup I have on here, and this is the config folder for it, is let's see, this is the config file, and it sends me an email. If you've seen every time I log into this machine, it says you have new mail. It's because like every night it sends me mail of anything that's updated. But if I go to config.d, and this, by the way, this is a pretty common paradigm on Linux, is if you'll have like your main config that has just the most core stuff. And then if you have like configs that are like for a specific task, you'll have them in a whatever.d folder. This is actually, if you remember with Apache that it was like sites enabled was the folder. On most other systems, that's actually called vhost.d. So it's just I don't know what the .d stands for, but that's just a common paradigm. So anyway, you can see I've only got one config. What?
Directory, probably.
Maybe, yeah, that's probably it. You can see I've got one config here, which is security, and it says a whole bunch of crap. I wrote this a while ago, I don't remember, but there's a specific list Debian maintains of updates that are just security based, separate from the rest of the updates. So I have it so it only does security updates. So I will stay secure, but I won't be breaking things because security updates are typically just the security updates. So that is the config I have here. And if I go to my cron config, we can see I've got cron apt here, and it runs every night at 4 a.m. It runs that. So that is the last planned thing I have. But any questions? Anything you want me to elaborate on?
That's pretty good.
It was a bit chaotic. I threw this together at the last second today, but
The library closes at 8.
oh, does it? Oh crap.
Well, good job. I mean,
Yeah, thanks.
it was really informative.
Yeah, thanks, Aiden. That was good. Kind of drinking from the fire hose.
Yeah, this is a big rabbit hole.
Yeah. I was trying to just like pick topics that would be interesting. I feel like I could have just like made IP
That's good,
tables
though.
the entire topic.
That was really good, though.
Or something like
that was a good overview.
Sometimes when you have a big rabbit hole like that, it's kind
Anyway.
of better to wet their whistle and then give them a launching point afterwards. Like, oh, if you're more curious about this.
So gotta wrap this up.
Yeah, all my slides are already on the website. They're actually not in, since it was like that terminal slide thing, they're actually just, if you go to the page for this meeting, they're just in Markdown there. And so all the links I had, you can click on, because some of them I didn't show, and some of them have more information than I had time to show, so.
Well, all right. Thanks for coming. It was good to meet you, Joseph.
That was cool. You guys made it really entertaining. You guys are good speakers.
Oh, dude.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah. But like I said, we have that lab going. We meet on Tuesdays. Devin knows about it. If you want to come by and see the lab, you're more than welcome to.
You guys do labs every Tuesdays?
Every Tuesday. It's like from 4 to 7, but it's
4:30 to 7:30-ish.
you just come
And
and
for
go.
anybody that wants to contribute, we have an executive meeting on Sundays.
Yeah, if you have any ideas and you want to come
Yeah,
eat
if you
sushi
want
and
to,
drink
if
beer.
you want to help out,
I like
if you want to help out and you have time, then just let us know.
I can pop by from 6 to 7.
Well, we have our
For the Tuesdays, yeah,
oh,
totally.
For the lab? Yeah, for sure. Executive meetings we typically meet 6:30. Just kind of figure it out. We have the back room, Mr. Sushi. We have the back room, Mr. Sushi reserved like indefinitely every single Sunday.
Cool.
So,
Alright, yeah.
it was good meeting you. Dude.